everyone, my name is Natalie Halandani, and today we're going to explore a movement that redefined the very definition of art. When we think of art, we often think of complex paintings or detailed sculptures. But in the 1960s, a group of artists decided that less is actually more. Today, we are diving into minimalism, a movement of radical simplicity, industrial materials, and the beauty of the objective world. Minimalism is an extreme form of abstract art developed in the USA in the 1960s and typified by artworks composed of simple geometric shapes based on the square and the rectangle. Minimalism is non-objective. This means the art doesn't represent a sunset, a feeling, or a person. It is just an object. Minimalist art offers a highly purified form of beauty. It can also be seen as representing such qualities as truth, because it does not pretend to be anything other than what it is: order, simplicity, and harmony. Minimalist art can be seen as extending the abstract idea that art should have its own reality and not be an imitation of some other thing. To understand minimalism, we have to look at where it came from. It primarily took root in New York City during the 1960s. Minimalism emerged in New York in the early 1960s among artists who were self-consciously renouncing recent art they thought had become stale and academic. Before minimalism, the art world was dominated by abstract expressionists like Jackson Pollock. Their work was hot, it was loud, messy, and deeply emotional. Minimalist artists staged a rebellion against this. They wanted art to be cool, calculated, and detached. Painters and sculptors avoided over symbolism and emotional content, but instead called attention in the materiality of the works. Minimalism didn't exist in a vacuum. It was a reflection of the socio-political climate of the 1960s. The factors that led to minimalism is the reaction against abstract expressionism. Artists felt the emotionalism of previous abstract art was stale and academic. They sought to remove the artist's personal expression from the work. Also, the influence of conceptual art, where the movement was tied to the idea that the concept behind the artwork was more important than the craft involved in making it, often removing the hand of the artist entirely. The influence of Russian constructivism led to the use of modular fabrication and industrial materials in preference to the craft techniques of traditional sculpture. The ready-mades of Marcel Duchamp were also inspirational examples of the employment of prefabricated materials. Based on these sources, minimalists created works that resembled factory-built commodities and opened traditional definitions of an art whose meaning was tied to a narrative or to the artist. Now we're going to talk about social political issues. The politics of non-politics or neutrality as stance. Minimalist art, particularly in its focus on what you see is what to see, was a deliberate attempt to remove emotion, metaphor, and political messaging from art. This stripping away of meaning was in itself a political statement against the intense subjectivity of abstract expressionism and the expectation that art must bear a message. Next, the anti-consumerism versus industrialism. While minimalists used industrial materials like steel, plexiglass, they were often critiquing the disposable nature of 1960s consumer culture by creating permanent, heavy, honest objects. And lastly, minimalism was quickly absorbed by the art market, becoming a currency of lucrative careers and often being dismissed as mere corporate decor or empty art. Now let's dive into the influential artists and works. Dan Falvey, iconic work, untitled in honor of Harold Wilkie. Why is it matters? It is used standard fluorescent light tubes to turn the entire room's atmosphere into the art. Flavin literally sculpts and defines spaces with colored light, creating a completely new form of art that is most notable for its lack of materiality, yet seemingly solid presence that almost appears to invade the viewer's space. Next is from Stella. Iconic work is De Fanny Hawk. Why is it matters? His black paintings use stripes to show that a painting is just a flat surface with paint on it. This, as, this artwork this artwork is a bold counter movement against the eminent abstract expressionist painters. Next is Donald Judd. Iconic work is untitled A Stack. Why is it matters? 10 identical iron boxes mounted to a wall. It emphasizes repetition and industrial fabrication. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Judd created multiple versions of this untitled work, always retaining the same skill but never using the same color or materials. He wanted his work to exist in real three-dimensional space rather than representing a fictive three-dimensional space or narrative as in traditional painting and sculpture. What was this art actually made of? Minimalists love industrial media. We're talking about steel, aluminum, plexiglass, concrete, and neon. These materials were honest. They didn't pretend to be anything else. The most common form was the grid. The grid is the ultimate minimalist tool because it is mathematical and has no hierarchy. We also see a lot of hard-edged paintings, which uses tape to ensure lines are perfectly straight and colors are flat. Again, the goal was to remove the personality of the brush stroke and focus on the purity of the form and color. Minimalist artists rejected traditional handcrafted materials in favor of industrial, prefabricated, and raw materials to illuminate evidence of the artist's hand. Jude, minimalism taught us that art doesn't have to be about something to be meaningful. By stripping away the noise, these artists force us to look at the world as it is, raw, geometric, and structural. It paved the way for modern design, from the phones in our pockets to the buildings we live in. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you for your time.